Friday night started out like any other. Uneventful, quiet, familiar in the way that marriage becomes after years of shared routines. Emily had texted me that morning saying she'd be home late because her office was throwing a farewell dinner for a colleague. Just some drinks, probably won't be back before 10, she wrote. I told her to have fun, kissed her goodbye before work, and didn't think anything of it. It's not like I had any reason to doubt her. She'd been in that job for almost 2 years now, and these kinds of after-work gatherings happened often enough. She was social, warm, the kind of person who actually stayed in touch with coworkers long after they moved on. So I stayed home, warmed up leftovers from the night before, and sat on the couch watching reruns with the dog curled up next to me. Ordinary, right? But around 9:30, I remembered the batteries. One of our smoke detectors had started chirping the night before, and I'd taken it down to stop the noise but never actually replaced the battery. I figured I'd run to the corner store before it got too late. Something quick, mindless, just to clear my head and check one small thing off the to-do list. The store was a few minutes away, but I ended up driving further. I don't even know why, really. Maybe I needed a break from the silence. Maybe I was bored. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe my gut already knew something my brain didn't. I found myself downtown, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the turn I took. An instinctive left that brought me past Rosselli's, a small Italian restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a florist shop. Candlelight flickered through its front windows, and even from the street, you could feel the warmth pouring out. Emily had mentioned it before once or twice. She said it had a romantic charm, that she'd love for us to try it someday. I parked across the street without even realizing I was going to. Maybe part of me just wanted to see the place for myself. Maybe I just wanted to confirm she wasn't there. But then I saw her. First, I thought I was wrong, that it wasn't her. The lighting, the angle, the distance, my brain scrambled for excuses. But no, it was her. Her hair, her coat, the way she laughed with her head tilted slightly back. That was Emily. No mistaking it. And she wasn't alone. There was a man standing with her. Tall, confident, well-dressed in that effortless way some guys have. He was holding her close, closer than you'd hold a coworker. One hand rested casually, but possessively, at her waist. Her arms were loosely around his neck, and she was laughing in a way that I hadn't seen in a long time. The kind of laugh that came from deep in her chest. Comfortable. Mate. It wasn't the hug that got me. It was how she leaned into him, like her whole body was magnetized to his. Like she belonged there. I froze in my seat, fingers locked around the steering wheel. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was an inside joke. Maybe she was saying goodbye and he was just touchy. Some people are like that, right? But then she reached up and brushed something off his jacket. Something invisible. Something that wasn't there. That tiny, unnecessary gesture shattered whatever fragile hope I had left. Then she turned and saw me. Her body stiffened immediately. The smile dropped off her face like a curtain falling at the end of a show. She disentangled herself from him so fast it looked rehearsed. She crossed the street, her pace somewhere between a jog and a march, her expression carefully blank but her eyes wide with panic. "Jason?" she said, voice high and tight. "What are you doing here?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My heart was pounding. I felt like I was seeing her for the first time, or someone who looked like her, wearing my wife's face. I thought you were at Sienna's," I said finally, the words sticking to my throat. Her eyes darted back toward the man, who was now casually scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. "We were," she said quickly. "The group came here after dinner for drinks. He's just a coworker. Jason, this isn't what it looks like." There it was. The line. I almost laughed. It's never what it looks like, right? That's what everyone says when they get caught. "I was just grabbing batteries," I said flatly, still staring past her at him. "Look, I know this looks bad, but please, he's leaving town. We were just saying goodbye. It's not Jason, you know me. That's the thing." I thought I did. She stood there waiting, like I was supposed to nod and tell her it was okay, like I'd accept this version of reality she was spinning in front of me. But I couldn't. Not tonight. "I'm going home," I said, stepping around her. "You coming?" She hesitated, just long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. "I'll get a ride," she said softly. I nodded, walked back to my car, and drove away without another word. My hands trembled on the wheel, and I realized I hadn't taken a full breath since I saw them together. At home, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. Suddenly it all seemed like a stage set from someone else's life. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the screen. A part of me expected her to text, to explain, to fight. But she didn't. Not right away. Hours passed and still nothing. Around midnight, the door opened. She came in quietly, like someone breaking into their own life. She didn't say anything, just slipped off her shoes and went upstairs. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat there in the quiet, trying to decide if I believed her. If I could believe her. If anything she said from that point forward would matter at all. Because in that single moment, under the soft glow of a downtown restaurant light, I saw something that no excuse could erase. And suddenly, the life I thought I understood felt like a stranger in my own home. That night, sleep never came. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the shallow rhythm of Emily's breathing beside me, wondering how it could sound so normal, so peaceful, when my world felt like it was collapsing from the inside out. My mind wouldn't let me rest. Every sound, every memory, every little moment from the last 6 months started spinning around like pieces of a puzzle that never quite made sense until now. Things I'd brushed off, things I had explained away or laughed about. Now they felt like warning signs I'd been too blind to read. It started with the yoga studio. A few months back, Emily had mentioned wanting to prioritize her wellness. She said she needed a break from the gym near our house because it was always too crowded, too impersonal. I told her I thought that was great. Honestly, I admired her for carving out time for herself. But instead of one nearby, she joined a studio clear across town. I remember thinking it was odd. It was a good 30-minute drive from home, but she said it had better instructors and a cleaner vibe. I shrugged it off at the time. I trusted her. Then came the perfume. One morning, as I was walking past her getting ready, I caught a scent I didn't recognize. It was different from the stuff she usually wore. Sharper, bolder, like something you'd put on for a night out, not downward dog. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said she was trying something new from a boutique. Figured it was time for a change, she'd said, waving it off like it was nothing. I told her she smelled great. That was my response. That's the part that makes me sick now. How eager I was to affirm her, even when my gut was already twisting. The little things piled up. Her showers started getting longer, 45 minutes, sometimes more. She claimed she was using that time to decompress after work or to meditate. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe her. Her phone, which used to sit on the kitchen counter or the coffee table without a second thought, suddenly became glued to her side. Always face down. Always on silent. I noticed it first when I reached for it to check the time and she snatched it away so fast, you'd think I'd reached for a live grenade. And yet, I didn't say anything. I told myself it was privacy. Everyone's entitled to that, right? We'd been married long enough that we didn't need to know every little detail. That's what I told myself. That's what she counted on. She started waking up before dawn. Said it helped her clear her head before the chaos of the day. She'd slip out of bed and whisper something about going for a drive or early meditation. Once or twice, I got up to make coffee and found the car already gone. "Where'd you go?" I asked the first time. "Oh, just parked by the lake and listened to music," she replied, eyes soft, voice calm. "Sometimes I just need the quiet." It sounded poetic, thoughtful, and I wanted to be the kind of husband who encouraged that, not the kind who interrogated it. So I let it go. Then came the new coworkers. One evening, she mentioned someone named Marcus. I'd never heard the name before. "He's new in marketing," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Super smart, kind of intense, but cool." The way she said cool stuck with me. I couldn't tell you why at the time, but it did. Marcus came up again a few days later. And again after that. She said he made great playlists, sent hilarious memes. was always up for deep philosophical conversations. It was always Marcus said this or Marcus and I talked about that. But I never met him. Not at the office holiday party. Not at the summer picnic. Not even in passing when I stopped by once to drop off her lunch. Every time I asked if she'd introduce me, there was an excuse. Oh, he left early. He's on PTO. He transferred to a satellite location. At some point, she stopped mentioning him altogether. Almost like she realized she'd said his name one too many times. The rides were another thing. I used to drop her off when her car was in the shop or when we were headed in the same direction. Then suddenly, she always had other plans, grabbing coffee with Jess, running errands near work, going out with the team, always something that required her to leave and return on her own. She'd come home glowing some nights, giddy, loose, humming little songs while she unpacked her purse or poured a glass of wine. Other times, she came home silent, distant, like her mind was still somewhere else. One night, I asked her what was on her mind. She smiled and said, "Just tired." Then she leaned over and kissed my cheek and said, "You worry too much." And maybe she was right. Or maybe she'd just gotten really good at saying the right thing at the right time. The breaking point, the one I now realize should have hit me like a freight train, was when she came home and said casually, "Oh, by the way, I might take a weekend trip soon, just to clear my head." "A trip?" I asked, surprised. "Where to?" She shrugged. "Not sure yet. Maybe up north. I've just been feeling kind of, I don't know, stuck." I nodded slowly, feeling the first crack split through my chest. "You want me to come?" She laughed. Not in a mean way, but in a dismissive one. "No, babe. This would be solo. Just me and the open road." That night, I lay in bed wide awake while she slept beside me, breathing easy. I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time I felt like I truly knew her. When did things start to change? Was it sudden, or had it crept in slowly, like rust on a hinge? Was it the missed date nights? The new lingerie I never saw her wear? The way she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking? And the worst part, what K** led me, was realizing I didn't know when I stopped being the person she came home to and became the person she hid things from. That week after the restaurant felt like walking through fog. She never brought it up again. Never explained. Never apologized. It was like she thought that by not talking about it, it would disappear. And part of me wanted to let it. But the other part, the part that had started paying attention, began to take notes, began to question, began to understand that what I saw that night wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. It was the tip of something much deeper, something she didn't want me to see, and I wasn't going to ignore it anymore. It happened the following Wednesday. I remember because I'd woken up with a pounding headache and a scratch in my throat that wouldn't quit. I called in sick to work, a rare thing for me, and told my crew I'd check in the next day. Emily had already left by the time I made it out of bed. Her usual whirlwind of motion replaced by silence and an empty house. I made some tea, wandered the house in my hoodie and sweatpants, and finally ended up in the office. I rarely spent time in there anymore. It had become more of a storage room, where bills piled up, old tech sat unused, and the Wi-Fi router blinked in its lonely corner. I was looking for my work laptop, which I thought I'd left in the bottom drawer. Instead, I found Emily's tablet plugged into the wall, screen lit up with the soft glow of a notification. Curiosity didn't hit me like a lightning bolt. It was slower, more reluctant. I stared at the tablet for a while, my mug warming my hands. She hadn't used it much in months, as far as I knew. Maybe she used it for her meditations or her yoga videos. That's what she told me. Anyway, the lock screen had no passcode. That alone surprised me. I didn't go snooping with an agenda. At least, that's what I told myself. I was looking for something benign. A calendar entry, an old photo, proof that I was overthinking everything. I wanted to be wrong. What I found was a second email account, registered to a Gmail I didn't recognize, tucked into the built-in mail app like it had been forgotten. Except it hadn't been. The inbox was full. Hundreds of messages. All to and from one person, M. No last name. No context. Just M. I clicked the most recent email, heart pounding like I just sprinted up a flight of stairs. The subject line read, "Last night." Inside, I found a message that started with, "You looked beautiful," and ended with, "I hate when I can't touch you." I sat very still. My tea was still in my hand, the steam curling around my face, but I didn't feel any of it. My world had gone eerily silent. I opened the next one, and the next, and the next. They were dated over months. Conversations that shifted from playful to deeply emotional to explicitly romantic. Some included photos, nothing graphic, but in asterisk made enough to make my stomach turn. A hand on her thigh in a car. A mirror selfie in the yoga studio. *T of their drinks clinking together over candlelight. There were hotel receipts, reservations under her name, rooms she claimed were booked for me time or for out-of-town yoga retreats. But the timestamps on the emails lined up perfectly. There was no mistaking it. She hadn't just been hiding an affair. She had been building a parallel life. One email from 2 weeks ago read, "Jason's been asking more questions. I think he's starting to suspect. We might have to figure things out soon, like, really figure them out." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Like I'd been punched without warning. That phrase, "really figure things out," burned into my mind like fire. She wasn't just fooling around. She was calculating. Planning. Weighing her options. I don't remember how long I sat there, reading message after message. Maybe an hour. Maybe 5. I scrolled through months of betrayal packaged in emojis and half-truths. They had inside jokes, nicknames, code words. They talked about me. About how oblivious I was. How predictable. One line, written by M in response to something Emily had said, read, "He's not going to see it coming. You've got him wrapped around your finger." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not just sadness. Not even anger. It was worse, clarity. That sharp, unforgiving sense of finally seeing the full picture. It was like watching a movie where the twist ending suddenly makes everything click and you sit there wondering how you missed it all along. This wasn't an impulsive one-night stand. This wasn't some emotional gap she fell into by accident. This was a structure. A hidden room built within our marriage. A place where I didn't exist. And the worst part? She was good at it. Too good. As I scrolled, I found drafts, emails she hadn't sent but had written. One of them was titled simply, "If I leave him." It was dated last month. She wrote, "Part of me wants to. But he's not a bad man. He's a good man. I don't know if I have the stomach to do it the right way. If we get caught, maybe it'll be easier. Maybe I'll be forced to choose." So that was it. I was plan B. The backup. The thing she would deal with if caught. And I had been caught the moment I saw her outside Rosselli's. I didn't confront her that day. I couldn't. I was too raw. Too rattled. I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out my next move. I forwarded every message to myself. Took *TS. Backed up the tablet to a drive I tucked away in the garage. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was methodical. Detached. Like something inside me had switched to autopilot. The kind of numb that only comes when your soul hasn't caught up with your body. That night, I made dinner like usual. Chicken and rice. I chopped the vegetables, stirred the sauce, set the table. When she came in, she kissed me on the cheek and smiled like nothing had changed. Maybe for her, nothing had. Maybe she had done it for so long it didn't even feel wrong anymore. We ate, made small talk, watched a show. I even laughed once. She laughed too. And the whole time I watched her like she was a stranger wearing my wife's skin. She didn't know I knew. She didn't know the mask had slipped. But I did. And there was no putting it back on. The next day, something in me shifted. I woke up early, before the sun even rose, and just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like it might give me the answers I didn't have. Emily lay beside me, curled up, peaceful, like she hadn't spent the last year dismantling our life one lie at a time. I wondered if she dreamt about him. If she imagined waking up next to someone else while I was still in the room. I didn't speak. Didn't wake her. I just got dressed and walked out the door. The cold air bit at my skin as I started the truck. I hadn't planned this out. I didn't have a strategy, just a quiet resolve. I needed to see where the lies led. I needed something tangible to go with all the emails and *TS, something that would make it all real in a way that glowing screens never could. I had the address. It was buried in one of the hotel confirmation emails, oddly casual in how it was written. Same place she'd typed. Unit 206. I Googled it first. It wasn't a hotel. It was an apartment, an upscale rental tucked away in a quieter part of the city, across town in a neighborhood we'd never had any reason to visit. Not near her work, not near her so-called yoga studio. A place that existed outside our life together. I drove there, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The streets were empty, still wrapped in early morning fog. I parked across from the building, a nondescript two-story walk-up with brick siding and a neat little garden out front. It looked normal. Innocent. Like the kind of place someone might live while saving up for something bigger. I waited. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for. Her car. Him. A sign. But mostly, I needed proof. The kind that didn't hide behind plausible deniability. I needed to see it, not just read it. I needed something undeniable to quiet that last flicker of hope still clinging to the idea that maybe, just maybe, this could be salvaged. I sat there for hours. The world slowly came to life around me. Dog walkers, joggers, delivery vans. I watched the front door like it was the final scene in a movie I didn't want to see. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, she texted me. Emily, work running late. Back by 8. Leftovers okay? I stared at it for a full minute, thumb hovering over the screen. I typed sure and hit send. My hand was steady. My insides weren't. At 5:12 p.m. I saw her car. She pulled up to the curb, parked like she'd done it a dozen times before, and stepped out carrying a bouquet of flowers and a takeout bag. My jaw clenched. She was smiling softly, privately, the way she used to smile after a surprise anniversary dinner or a weekend getaway. She looked happy. He opened the door. He wasn't in a rush. No guilt, no hesitation. Just stepped out in jeans and a plain white t-shirt like he'd just woken up from a nap. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and looked at her like she was his favorite story. She handed him the flowers. Then she kissed him. Not a peck. Not an awkward half-greeting. She wrapped her arm around his neck, leaned in like they'd done it 100 times. He pulled her close by the waist, the same way I used to. The same way I had once thought was just ours. And then she stepped inside. The door closed. And that was it. No fight. No confrontation. No dramatic music. Just me sitting in my truck, staring at the front door of a life I didn't know existed. A life I clearly wasn't a part of. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb, until the sun started to set and the streetlights flickered on one by one. Then I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Not for revenge. Not for spite. Just to remind myself that I hadn't imagined it. That I had seen it with my own eyes. That the woman I loved, the life we'd built, the promises we made, all of it was already gone. When I got home, the house felt different. Like the furniture had shifted slightly, like the air had thinned out. I walked in, dropped my keys on the counter, and stood in the middle of the living room trying to remember the last time I'd felt like this place was mine. It wasn't sadness. Not really. It was recognition. The kind of clarity that hurts more because it doesn't come with noise or chaos. It comes in silence. I sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at nothing for a long time. Emily didn't come home that night. She didn't even text to explain. And the scary part? I didn't expect her to. Because deep down I finally understood the truth. She'd already left a long time ago. The next morning I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Not peace, not even close, but clarity. A sharp-edged clarity that cut through the fog I'd been stumbling around in for weeks. For the first time since this all started, I wasn't wondering what Emily was doing or who she was doing it with. I already knew. And now it was time to do something about it. While she was off building a second life in some quiet apartment with the man from the emails, I was going to dismantle the one we had shared, brick by brick, clause by clause. No screaming matches. No dramatic ultimatums. Just facts. Proof. And action. First, I pulled out the box where we kept all the important papers, birth certificates, insurance info, bank statements. I sat at the dining table, surrounded by old receipts, account summaries, copies of tax filings, and a manila folder marked simply mortgage. I created a list, assets, liabilities, accounts in both our names, and what I knew she had in hers. I already had the emails, the screenshot asterisk TS, the photo from the apartment, but I needed everything else to be airtight. She wasn't just cheating. She was playing a long game, and I had no idea what cards she was still holding. I had to assume she'd prepared for this, maybe not consciously, maybe not maliciously, but in some corner of her mind, she'd been walking a tightrope, wondering what would happen if she ever fell. So I called a lawyer. His name was Daniel Weiss. He came recommended by a friend, someone who had been through his own hellish split the year before. Daniel picked up on the second ring. His voice was calm, direct, like he'd been expecting my call. "How bad is it?" he asked after I gave him the bare bones of the story. "Pretty bad," I said. "But I have everything. Messages. Photos. Dates." "Good," he replied without hesitation. Send them. I'll take a look and we'll meet tomorrow. Bring everything financials, communications, anything she signed in the last year. I want a full picture. After we hung up, I opened a new email and attached every screenshot, every forwarded message from her secret account, the image of her kissing the man at the apartment door. I added a brief note at the end. She doesn't know I know. Yet, once the email was sent, I started on the bank accounts. We had 2 joint accounts, one for bills, one for savings. Both were still accessible to me. I checked the recent activity. Nothing wild, but there were patterns I hadn't noticed before. Transfers. Withdrawals on the days she claimed to be out with friends. An Uber charge that lined up with the day I saw her at Rosselli's. Subtle but consistent. I moved half the savings to a new personal account under my name. Legally sound, according to Daniel's earlier advice. I also froze any automatic transfers out of the joint accounts. If she noticed, she'd probably chalk it up to bank error. If she asked, I'd play dumb. Until the paperwork was in her hands, I wasn't tipping my hand. Next, I changed the passwords to our cloud drive, the one where we stored tax returns, scanned documents, house renovations. She hadn't touched it in months, but I wasn't taking chances. I needed to secure anything she might try to spin later. Then came the house. The mortgage was in both our names. We'd bought the place 5 years ago, just before the market jumped. We put a lot into it, weekends of DIY, late nights laying tile or painting baseboards while listening to music and sipping wine. It used to feel like a symbol of who we were. Now it just felt like territory. And I wasn't about to give it up. Daniel had warned me that emotional attachment could be a trap in divorces, especially when the other person had already detached. But if the equity's strong and the documentation's clean, he said, you have leverage. Especially with proof of infidelity. So I started gathering. Photos of renovation receipts, before and after sh*ts, the appraisal from last year. I even found the old spreadsheet where we tracked our savings for the down payment. My handwriting. Her notes in the margins. Evidence that I'd been there from the beginning. That I hadn't just shown up when things got hard, I built this. By that evening, I had 3 folders, legal, financial, personal. All neatly organized. All indisputable. Emily came home just after 8. I heard the door open, the familiar sound of her keys dropping into the bowl by the entryway. She hummed a little tune, something upbeat, almost giddy. I didn't move. I stayed in the kitchen, organizing documents, the faint sound of the printer still humming in the background. Hey, she called. Sorry, work dragged on. There was some weird client issue. I glanced up from my stack of papers and met her eyes. I didn't say anything. She paused in the doorway. Everything okay? Yeah, I said evenly. Just going through some stuff. She looked at the files on the table, then back at me. Taxes? Something like that. She stood there for a moment too long. Then she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm gonna shower. Take your time, I replied. As she disappeared upstairs, I stared at the spot where she had stood. It was like watching someone I used to know, like seeing a ghost of a life that had already ended. That night, I wrote out a list of custody considerations. We didn't have kids, but we did have a dog, Bailey. She'd been mine originally before we got married. Emily loved her, but she'd been absent more and more lately. I wasn't going to risk that she'd claim ownership just to spite me. I added her vet records, microchip registration, and adoption documents to the personal folder. I went to bed late. She was already asleep, curled up on her side of the bed like she had nothing to hide. I lay down and stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence that used to be comforting but now felt suffocating. The next day, I met with Daniel. His office was clean and professional, tucked into a building full of firms and consultants. He wore a gray suit and a gold watch and spoke like someone who'd handled worse than what I was bringing him. He flipped through my folders, nodding occasionally jotting notes on a yellow legal pad. You've done most of my job for me, he said, finally looking up. I just want it over. He nodded. You have grounds for divorce based on infidelity, emotional distress, and breach of trust. Given your evidence, we'll push for a favorable split. House. Financial division. You name it. And Bailey, I said. He smiled. We'll make sure of that. He laid out a strategy, serve her quietly, avoid confrontation. Let the facts speak. He would file the petition by the end of the week. I would get a call when the papers were ready to be delivered. Once she gets them, he said, everything changes. Be prepared. That night, I went home and cooked dinner. Emily was on the phone when I got in, laughing, her voice bright, bubbly. Probably talking to him. I didn't say a word. I ate in silence, took a walk with Bailey, and sat on the back porch with a glass of bourbon, staring at the stars like they might offer advice. I'd done everything I could to prepare. I'd locked down the finances, secured the evidence, built a plan. Now all that was left was the collapse. And I was ready. When the divorce papers were delivered, she didn't react right away. She called me at work, her voice shaking, clipped. "What is this?" "You know what it is," I said. A long pause. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." "I gave you plenty of chances. You used them to lie." The next few weeks were a blur of logistics and cold conversations. She tried to justify her actions, said she felt lonely, unappreciated, disconnected. That it just happened, that she never meant to hurt me. But with every excuse, her credibility shrank. I let my lawyer do most of the talking. I wasn't interested in revenge, I just wanted out. And thanks to the evidence, the process was quick. No drawn-out court battle. No custody disputes. The house was awarded to me. Bailey stayed with me. Most of the joint assets were split in my favor. She moved into the apartment she once shared with him. I later heard, through a mutual acquaintance, that he left her not long after. Turned out he was married, too. The double life she built crumbled the moment it became real. She reached out a few times. Letters. Emails. A voicemail once, crying, saying she missed the version of us that used to exist. I never responded. I knew any re-entry would only drag me backward. Instead, I focused forward. I took on a new project at work, one I'd been hesitant about for years. It grew faster than I expected. More contracts. More trust in my own judgment. More time spent creating instead of surviving. Evenings became mine again. I rebuilt the garage into a workshop. Bailey and I started hiking on Sundays. I saw friends I hadn't talked to in years. People said I looked lighter. Maybe I did. 9 months later, I stood on the porch of a modest house on the edge of town. Trees lined the property. Birds sang in the morning. I didn't hear traffic anymore or the hum of tension that used to fill every corner of our old house. I built shelves in the workshop. Grew tomatoes in the backyard. Read books without checking the clock. Life had become quieter. Better. Not because I forgot, but because I finally understood. Emily's betrayal didn't end me. It revealed what I'd been ignoring. I had been giving pieces of myself away to keep a version of love that didn't love me back. Now I was building something new, not perfect, but honest. There's a kind of peace in being alone that doesn't feel like loneliness. It feels like knowing exactly where you stand. Like walking into your home and recognizing every part of it. One evening, as I sat on the porch sipping coffee, watching the sun dip below the tree line, a breeze rustled the trees. Bailey lay curled at my feet. And I realized something. My new life didn't start when Emily left. It started the moment I saw her in someone else's arms and chose not to look away.